Welcome to Thriller Bitcoin. Welcome to Thriller Bitcoin.
Home Alone, like where you get stuck like Macaulay Culkin and you have no.
So last year I got stuck on account of the Southwest BS. You remember that when they just totally melted down?
Oh yeah, where the people were literally quitting because of the COVID stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I ended up just hanging out more. Luckily, I work remotely, so it doesn't.
That was a wild. Was that only last year?
That was last year.
Wow, dude.
It was like 10 days.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So how are you liking Texas now? Because you've been here not that long. You've only been here like less than a year, right?
A year and change.
Oh, a year and change? Okay.
Yeah, it's. I like to say I'm in Texas and I'm in Austin. So Texas is Bizarro World, and then Austin is Bizarro World inside of Bizarro World. So
it is kind of weird.
Yeah, and I love the weather, so I love getting sun on my skin. 200 something days of the year. Where I'm from, it's like it snows from Halloween to Mother's Day sometimes. So that's refreshing. The people here are super friendly.
Yeah. Got some base Bitcoiners out here. Huh?
And we got tons of Bitcoiners out here. It's amazing. I'm drinking from the fire hose. I'm learning something crazy new every day.
What's one thing that you've been surprised about the Bitcoin community here in Austin? Just so people that are like out there listening to this and you're like, I thought it was going to be this way and it's not, or something like that.
I would say it's more welcoming than you probably think it is. You come in and you're like, well, these guys are all heavy hitters. You see the level of intellectual firepower and you're like, well, I'm just a pleb. They're not going to welcome me, but they do. The first time I showed up at pleblab, everyone was real welcoming. Everyone was real kind to me, and they were talking to me about my project. They're real supportive. And what I love about it is, not growing up, since I was in my mid to late 20s, I was always kind of a solopreneur. I was, I would do my fiat job, and then I would go home, engineer my whole life around being able to put in another 6 to 8 hours if possible, and, grind it out and try to make a real business. I was not successful in doing that, but I was doing that by myself, and I was having to sacrifice a lot of my social life on account of that. And the beauty of pleblab is, I'm in here, I'm doing that type of stuff, but other people around me doing it too. So you're exchanging notes. Sometimes you're even sharing code because you're working on almost the same problem that's happened a couple times. And also you just kind of have the social aspect where you don't feel like you're in it alone, which is pretty great for me.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's always good to hear everybody's individual story and how different it is. Yeah, I remember, like, for me personally, and I've talked about this on the pod before, but all we had was BitDevs. And that was it. And then even for that, it wasn't like a really big thing until Parker made it a big thing in 21. And that was it. It was a once a month thing. Everybody would, somebody like me, I would look forward to the barbecue event afterwards. So that's what I would look forward to, is the social part of it, because I wasn't a coder or whatever. But I just wanted to hang out with Bitcoiners. And then that was what really kind of got me going on where I wanted to see happen in my city,
You mean you didn't get all excited over nerds just arguing over like little tiny details?
I remember a couple times in a gosh, most people don't even remember this, so it doesn't matter. I remember a couple times where we would discuss like spicy topics, like in bit devs, and this was like, back 21 or whatever, and I would chime out and like say something that was totally against everything that was in the room, and people were fine with it. It didn't bother anybody. But I remember thinking at the time, like, oh, should I have done that? People are gonna, and that never happened. But,
everyone thinks that Bitcoiners, just based on Twitter, how hostile it seems, everyone thinks Bitcoiners are full of hate. Like there's some, shitcoiners in town that I'm friendly with. I wouldn't call them friends, but I know them. And they're like, well, we're going to win because we're not full of hate. And I'm like, neither are we really. We just love to build, and we're not going to tolerate, grifting, which is what we think is happening.
Dude, that's one thing I think, like the shitcoiners in town, though, they like kind of see their way out, if that makes sense, right?
What do you mean?
Like, remember there's a couple people that would try to come into pleblab and they were total shitcoiners. And at a certain point, it was just obvious, like, okay, they're just here just to like,
they're being too nice. You're like,
no, it's not even too nice. They're just like, they're being inauthentic. It's more that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So the instance that I'm thinking of is somebody came to ABC and they were extremely friendly. I try to be friendly, but then it's just like, okay, you're overdoing it. And I can see that you probably have some agenda, and I don't like this. So
yeah, and there's the difference between the poo-poo coiners who are kind of like they're developers, they just don't know any better, like they don't know the better technology, they think like Solano is it, and then they come in, they're like, oh wow, Lightning's actually better, and it matches with what I want to do in life. Like,
well, that was amazing to me. We had somebody like that. He's a superb engineer. Thank God we rescued him, made him a Bitcoiner. Superb engineer. I've worked with him. Brilliant mind, firmware engineer. So like really low level software where it's like high stakes. It's like, if you mess up, this piece of hardware is not going to work. And it's literally just going to come.
It's just on metal or something?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's on a microcontroller. And so usually that means it's being packaged in a hardware setup. And the interesting thing about the economics of that is like, you get one shot at it. It's kind of like an example of an embedded system would be sending a rover to the moon. So it's like you get one shot at it. And if you mess it up, it's really hard to put a patch on it. You can do over the air updates, but if you mess up bad enough, then it's gone. So like something like that's $1 million project. Now, maybe it's a lower level problem, but I remember being at Fortune 500 companies, somebody screwed something up, and now a whole engineering team has to spend 72 hours doing over the air updates on Bluetooth trying to fix this thing because they literally can't ship millions of dollars worth of product. And it's like the stakes are super high. Whereas, if you mess up in other kinds of software, sure, you could have some downtime, of course, but the stakes are a little bit lower because the marginal cost of production isn't so high.
Yeah. Gosh, dude. When you say that, I think of the, what was it called? I saw this documentary about them sending rovers to Mars, and they lasted like 20 years. It's an amazing documentary, and it talks about what you just described. One of them died sooner than the other one, but they only wanted to get, I think, like 5 years out of it, and they ended up getting like 15 or 20 years out of it, which is incredible.
Yeah. It's always incredible. My dad's worked on stuff like that. He's not an embedded systems guy. He's a mechanical engineer, but he's worked on NASA type programs, and it's amazing to see like these telescopes that are going up.
Dude,
there.
Your dad sounds pretty based, dude. Every time we have a conversation about your dad, I'm like, I can't wait to meet this man.
Sometimes I feel like he's my 15-year-old brother because I'll just say like a term that's kind of funny and based, and he'll just repeat. He'll keep saying
what did I don't know. I don't want to dox him or anything, but like what did he work on like growing up when you're like, and how did that influence you?
He's worked on all kinds of stuff. I mean, my dad's just a general purpose. I hesitate to use this term, but it seems like a genius. I mean, he's worked on, he went through what is called the Edison program at General Electric. So General Electric actually used to be the Edison company, and then JP Morgan bought him out.
Right.
Not just the company, JP Morgan himself bought him out, created General Electric, and then they were a huge titan. And they had a great program that would take engineers and kind of do like almost like a work study program where it's like, okay, you're going to get your master's, you're a promising bachelor graduate, you're going to get your master's, but you're also going to work on really hard engineering problems. And we're going to just put you through boot camp basically. And so he went through that program. And I think he was already, an incredible engineer, but he just keeps leveling up. And so he worked at GE. I'm not too sure what he worked on there, but he used to work at Kodak back in the day, just working on like really high level projects there. Anti-vibe in the 80s when it's like that didn't even exist, and all kinds of stuff with HVAC, heating, ventilation, and cooling. So a lot of thermodynamics, and then that led to him working on a lot of like power system stuff. So I've seen him growing up. I've seen him work on hydroelectric power, literally Niagara Falls, all kinds of stuff. I remember turning wrenches with him. He was building something called a heliostat, which is a unique way of capturing solar energy that takes mirrors and focuses the sun's energy on a central point. It uses thermal energy instead of photons. So the photons are tough because if the sun goes behind a cloud, you're screwed. You go to zero immediately, right? Which is why you need something like a Bitcoin miner in today's environment to be able to keep up with that.
Yeah.
But you have to match supply and demand in real time. So that's a huge vulnerability in your grid. So the interesting thing about a heliostat is if the sun goes behind a cloud, okay, you're not going to generate as much power, but you still have built up energy from, the fact that you were heating up, you were capturing the thermal energy and you heated up this molten salt, which is now pressurizing a turbine. You never go to zero with a heliostat. I think there were other trade-offs and problems with those that we can get into, but it was cool to just see him doing stuff like that and just him kind of inspiring me to think about inventing things and like it is possible. Showing me what's possible.
How many patents does your dad have?
I don't know. I remember I got my first patent a couple of years ago and I was proud of it and I showed it to him. He's like, well, we're going to print it out. And he printed it out and put it on the wall. And he also printed out, like at least a dozen other ones that he was on. And then he put them on the wall. And they put it on the wall. Knowing him, he wasn't trying to dunk on me. I think he was proud and he just wanted to do it. Like, yeah. But it's just kind of funny how I was like, wow,
that's awesome,
he really beat me.
What do you tell him that you work on Bitcoin stuff? What does he think? Like, cause you helped create the lightning door, that was because of your knowledge of like embedded systems and integrating that with like, with Topher and the rest of the guys here with like the lightning stuff and NFC stuff. Like what, does he know that you're doing not similar things, but you're literally working with energy, just like, a different type of energy.
My dad is such a big brain. I just sent him the talk and he was like, oh yeah, I get it. Like,
oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It doesn't awesome. Really, I think we're Italians from the East Coast. So we're always like, how is this person trying to scam me? So I think that was his big barrier of Bitcoin. And then he saw, how I overcame that hurdle and became pretty bullish and became really interested in this stuff. So I think that opened the door for him a little bit. And I think just also he's a stubborn man. So it took him even longer, but eventually I got the right combination of current events and, slowly working on him. Like basically I bombarded him for probably about a year and then he was annoyed with me. And then I stopped for a long time and it's like, I don't even mention it. And now he kind of came around to it on his own. Cause you kind of got to let people, you got to kind of let people come around to things on their own. I don't think you can truly persuade people. Yeah. They kind of have to persuade themselves in a way.
Yeah. Especially with Bitcoin, man. I've always said it's such a mind wrap, like, especially for people that are already, embedded into this like system that they grew up in. And for them to think outside of that is just, it's mind altering. Dude.
It's an odyssey of the mind for sure.
That's why it's so important. I think when you're looking at branding and you're looking at marketing, it's to try to reach the thing that they can relate to from their childhood or anything like that. Cause that's something that they can pull from and draw emotional attachment to. Maybe that's like the dark side of tactics, but it works. I mean, we see the fiat space. They do that all the time with like whatever movies they're trying to launch or any type of like, Apple does this, right? Nike does this. Like, this is just normal. We got to get better at utilizing our means and doing it effectively, especially because we're trying to save people. I mean, let's be honest about it.
It's a dirty word, but propaganda is effective. I mean, it doesn't always have to be used for bad.
Yeah. So we're here to talk about AI privacy. Does anybody care about privacy on AI, or do anybody care about? Do you care?
I care.
Why do you care for?
So I think to date, I always look at where we are technologically, and I just always say it's like baby's first ethical dilemma of this kind. And so, the surveillance economy to date has been kind of creepy, but it hasn't been so over the top that I don't think it's freaked out enough people yet.
Did you see Mission Impossible 7 or whatever it was?
I haven't seen it yet, but I get the basic idea.
That scared the crap out of me.
Well, what scares me is, if you pay for a service, if you sign in to Amazon or Google, they follow you all over the internet with those cookies. If you don't use a VPN, you're doxxed. I mean, they know who you are, and that I wouldn't have a problem with that if I thought they had my best interests in mind, but they seem not to. So I have concerns for that. And just overall, I think privacy is kind of a public good in a sense. The more people that are kind of off the grid, the harder it is for them to track things and kind of build this huge centralized machine that's kind of manipulating people.
I mean, there's talks. I mean, you're on podcasts. I mean, you hear podcasts and you listen to some of these other people talk about privacy and talk about AI and stuff. And I think the biggest privacy concerns surrounding it are just the, it feels like this. It doesn't mean it is, but it feels like privacy is just for the elites. Like privacy is just for, the people that, that have the means to control it. Right. I mean,
that what you're saying is kind of remind me of Marty's podcast with Balaji. I thought it was really good. He talks about how, conspicuously, I forgot the name of the guy that runs the New York Times, but he's conspicuously never in the news. But, the immigrant from Korea or India or Eastern Europe that happened to make their way in Silicon Valley, they're suddenly public enemy number one, even though, maybe they have a few mil in the bank. They're not, which is good, but that they're not pulling the puppet strings. They just did pretty well. And those people are getting exposed and taunted by, the trust fund babies at the New York Times.
Do you think it's because of the amount of data and just the velocity of it in that it's just so, I mean, it's out there, right? I mean, you're talking about facial recognition software data sets that are out there, right? That are for sale. Talking about what you just described, right? Like the Amazon AWS data set, or and you're talking about like just this enormous amount of ocean of data out there.
And we're volunteering it with social media. Even right now, people might be able to make deep fakes of us, which is kind of scary to think about.
Probably happening right now as we speak.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say. Like, how do we? Can you effectively fight against that on the AI side? I feel like it's inevitable, kind of, right? I don't mean to be a doomer, but I'm just trying to paint a realistic picture.
I think there's levels to it. Obviously, you point out, they could look at anything you posted on social media. They could look at your facial recognition. Sure, maybe that's doxed, but how about your innermost thinking? I think if Google knows who you are, they can, based on what you're searching, they can figure out what you're thinking. So at a minimum, why wouldn't you just use a private browser? Why wouldn't you open up a new private instance each time you use it? Why wouldn't you be behind a VPN so they at least stop the bleeding, And I think the same idea of being able to see what you're thinking with Google is kicked into overdrive with these LLMs. If you're using this for productivity, that's great, but they can also probably figure out what your intention is while you're using it and steal your IP or otherwise, otherwise act out of accord with your best interests.
So you're telling me you don't want to get your face scan with the orb?
I don't want to get my face scanned with the orb.
Did you see the whole Sam Altman thing? What'd you think about that kind of? Because they fired him, right?
I have an interesting theory about this. So my understanding of the events is that there was one very militant board member that was not satisfied with Sam for some reason. One of the theories is that they were concerned about this new Q-star algorithm, which has the capability of taking the, it's a big breakthrough that has the potential to let it, LLMs reason and other AI systems reason about the world in a way that's much more advanced in topics such as mathematics, which they're notoriously bad at. And that there were serious ethical concerns around this. and obviously they removed him. Then Sam went to Microsoft, kind of made some power moves,
big power moves,
and then they almost had a mutiny on their hands. What was it? 700 or 750, something like that. Almost 90% of the workforce was going to quit and just go to Microsoft. So it's like, okay, this is going to happen anyway. So you might as well.
Leaders matter.
It's hats off to him for having such a loyal crew. He must be very charismatic and probably have good empathy skills. But at the same time, you worry about the fact that he went to Congress and said, well, I have this board and they're going to keep me in line and yada, yada. But now when push comes to shove, it's like, they're not. Now you got Larry Summers on the board.
Yeah. He went to Daddy Satya. What's it? Satya? He went to Daddy Satya. I was like, help me.
Yeah.
Well, and he did though. He did.
Well, the flip side of this is, I don't know. I don't trust any of these people to begin with, but it seems like there's at least LARPing about caring about the trade-off between commercial concerns and ethics and safety. But it seems like if there were concerns about ethics or safety, it's possible that Microsoft just orchestrated this whole thing as a power move, right?
I don't know. Did you take a look at their founding documents though? There's a great stratechary post and it got shared on Snacker News, and freaking love Ben too. Ben Thompson is like, been following him for a really long time. A lot of the alpha that I get from just my understanding of like startups and the tech space for the past 15 years has been from stratechary. It's great. I encourage anybody to like sign up. It's like $100 a year. It's freaking worth it. Anyway, it was interesting that he got this document and explained exactly how they were kind of broken out. Like there's this 501 that sits at the top. There's an LLC that controls all the equity, and that these like the employees and everybody else is grabbing from there. Then there's another one just for like, ChatGPT LLC. And then there's one that raises. It was just, to me, when I looked at it, I was just like, wow, it looks total sus. There's just a lot going on there that looks super sus. And when you're doing like a startup, the last thing you want to do is create any kind of friction like that, or to look at it to where when you look at it on paper, it doesn't look normal. It's the last thing you want to do. You want to keep it very flat, right? But to me, it seemed very weird that he was running this 501 and doing all this other stuff in the background, and it just seemed very sus, dude. That to me was the biggest red flag that I saw. And I couldn't believe, I don't know how Ben Thompson got that. Like, that's crazy. Like that leaked out. It's probably because they had to, right? Maybe it's in their docs that they have to by being a 501, but there was some good journalistic digging that he did.
Yeah. Ben Thompson is a beast.
Yeah.
But Ben Thompson's a beast. And, for me, it makes sense sometimes to have holding companies hold your patents and like limit your liability. But obviously you're right. There's some stuff going on. Didn't Elon help them start OpenAI? What's open about it? How can you be open but have closed source code? I think I was surprised they released anything.
Well, no, that was an LLC that they created underneath it. So the whole thing.
Fair enough, but why is that a closed source? What's the point? Why not just start a new company at that point?
Because it's valuable, Jim. That part is valuable.
I know, but just go start a new company and don't make it closed source. That's
the other thing was weird. Is he had no equity in any of this stuff, which is even more sus, right? Like he has no skin in the game. And for me, that's just like you look at any person with a sane mind is like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, the CEO that's going to work himself like a dog should have skin in the game. And if he doesn't, then there's a big problem.
It just seems really weird, dude. Maybe he was paid a different way. Maybe he was doing a favor. Who knows? It was just very interesting that all this kind of came out and all at once, and way to close the year,
It almost seems staged to me. I don't know. I almost think, maybe Microsoft egged on that board member to just go nuclear like that. And then it gave them leverage.
Sometimes it's good just to air out your dirty laundry like that all at once. And then you like fumigate it basically. And then at that point you can start off anew. And when there's questions going forward, it's like, no, this is who we are now. This is who we were back then, that kind of thing. So it makes sense from like a founder's perspective. You'd want to do that. But at that kind of like at that kind of juncture, during the holidays, I guess it kind of makes sense. I don't know, man. It's just really weird. There's a lot of crazy shit that happened this week. lot of crazy shit.
Yeah, it's not so open AI in my eyes.
Do you think they give a shit about privacy or no?
No, they definitely don't care about privacy. I mean, if you think about it in a sense, they have an anti-incentive to care about privacy because.
Why do you say that for?
Well, because the more data that they collect, the more that they can iterate on their LLMs and make them better. So if they know more about you, they can actually use that information to make the LLM better. So just from that standpoint, even if they were totally neutral and not hostile to you in any way, they would have an interest in collecting that information, making a profile of you, because then that would make their product better. So right off the bat, I don't think they care about privacy. You could say maybe, beyond the, yeah, they're vampiring all of your, all of your data and using it against you. And, that's the scary thing is, if I were a business and I were serious about building any kind of LLM product, all these, it's kind of like how, every company is an internet company now. I think it is possible that every company will be sort of an AI company in some sense. But I think you gotta keep your data and try to build your own. And you're better off at this stage when it's still kind of an arms race. You're better off just taking your own embeddings and trying to use the open source stuff to build your own thing and not just give that up to open AI, because eventually they'll just run you out of town. They'll just remove you from the process entirely.
Yeah. So how do we as Bitcoiners figure out this privacy portion, but also figure out this I guess here, let me rephrase it. How do we as Bitcoiners figure out the privacy mechanics or mechanisms with AI while also maintaining our sovereignty?
Yeah, I think it's tough because it's such a drastic productivity tool. I mean, you see it in just coding. It's like, okay, I'm never going to write a parser again. Parser takes, disparate data and then refactors it and processes it so that you can use it. That's pretty tedious and time consuming, and just not having to do that anymore is very useful, right? That saves me tons of time. So it's a huge productivity gain. However, I would say it's two things. If you're worried about the privacy aspect, it's number one, if you can, run your own damn LLM. And if you can't, then try to find one that at least lets you stay anonymous. And that's the beauty of Lightning and L402s is it's possible to do that. It's possible to launder your requests through someone else so that at least, ChatGPT isn't building up a repository of your profile to later use against you.
So if you did it that way, I guess who's actually getting, I guess, doxxed in that scenario? Is it the
Yeah, it would be whoever's API key is attached, or whoever's credit card is attached to that API key. It would be.
Yeah. And okay, we'll jump into
so it'll be almost like a VPN situation in a way.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you said the other option is running your own LLM, and how would that basically, just like an on-prem thing, or what?
Yeah, run your own LLM. There's all these open source models. There's Llama, there's Falcon, there's all these new ones coming out, and they keep getting better and better. Maybe they're not in some ways as good as ChatGPT, but I think it's just the risk reward profile. If you have a low time preference, if you're thinking long term, it makes more sense.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the intranets, like back in the day, how everybody just ran their own intranet internally, and then everybody had their own on-prem like Exchange server, and that's what it kind of reminds me of.
Yeah, if you can run
before we had like cloud, and Azure and AWS and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, if you can run your own. If you can remain anonymous. If you can, maybe in between as you chip in with a group of people and you all share the cost of setting it up. Or another model would be you have an Uncle Jim in your community that's savvy enough to run one of these.
An UncleJim21.
Yeah.
Patreon.
You could have an Uncle Jim in your community that where he lives. You shook his hand, him, and he's going to run this thing. You don't have to worry about the stress of it. Maybe throw him a few sats or whatever, and now you at least minimize your risk. Because ChatGPT, just for the simple fact that they're a corporation, they don't care about you. They're not going to protect your privacy. They're not going to protect your data. They're not going to not repurpose your intellectual property for their own gain. But
it's not a bad
idea. Yeah,
that's not a bad idea, dude. I mean, we were talking for a while here in 21 about doing our own like mesh network and like connect to the commons, so that way we would have like just like our own. Do you know what I mean?
No matter what. Yeah.
Yeah. No
You
matter
worry about
what,
all
we
the
could still
censorship
send.
stuff.
Yeah, we could still send out transactions.
Yeah, it's not hard.
And
Super Testnet's thinking about this stuff pretty hard. He's trying to do we did the radio project together.
Yeah. So like, I wonder, could you theoretically do something where there could be an LLM that a community of Bitcoiners could use?
100%. I mean, we're going to build one here at pleblab.
Really?
Yeah. So
I didn't get the memo.
I told you about that.
I didn't know you guys were serious about it. Really?
Yeah. I mean, the hardware's sitting right over there, man.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. So yeah, I obviously it's not going to be top of line. It's not going to be the ChatGPT 4 level, but I don't know that you need that for a lot of tasks. I mean, some of them you do, but we're going to start experimenting with just running our own LLMs. And once we kind of have the recipe down, we want to help train other people how to do it and also train them up on how to monetize it so you can share the cost, you know?
Yeah. So let's jump into that. Okay. So it sounds like the privacy issues, alternatives, or I should say the AI privacy issue that we have here sitting in front of us is there's two paths right now. It seems like maybe there's more paths that we haven't thought of yet, but one of the paths is use something like an intermediary like Nostr or something to find, these different plebs that will give you the access, kind of like a VPN, right? Like you described. The other thing is, it sounds like the other option is just your local on-prem LLM, right?
Yep.
So let's talk about CASCDR. You built this crazy thing called CASCDR. I don't know where you got the idea from, but you've been working on it since TabConf because I think you guys won, right? Yeah.
We didn't win. Super beat us, but we placed. And I worked with two guys. Shout out to Christian, a great engineer. We were talking about him earlier, great firmware engineer. And then we have Topher Scott, also a great engineer. So we came up with a way to broadcast offers for API services, not just AI service, but any API service over Nostr and attach to it a price. And you say, this is what the service is. This is what its inputs are. This is what its outputs are. This is what it costs. And then now you can shop. And ideally, if you have a few open source, service, microservice repositories out there, now theoretically anyone could go out there and just broadcast on Nostr. This is what I have. This is what I'm willing to take. This is what I'll give you, and this is what I'm charging. And so now,
I'll pull it up right here on the screen.
Now you can consume these services totally anonymously. Because you're paying for them over Lightning. So you have pretty good privacy as a sender. So
explain the logic. So let's kind of walk through this kind of, so right now, if you guys are listening to this, check out CASCDR, CASCDR-dev.forsale.app. It's still in demo stage, but kind of explain the idea behind this and what CASCDR is, all that kind of stuff, Jim.
Yeah. So I don't know where this idea germinated in my head, but I just got this idea of, I shouldn't have to dox myself to use any of these services, first of all. So that was the first thought. The other thought was, there's people in the world that can't get access to a US credit card or a credit card capable of buying ChatGPT. And even if they can, they shouldn't have to pay $20 a month if they're only going to use it a few times just for a few odds and ends.
Turns out for some people in Mexico, that's their whole week's pay.
Yeah. And that's outrageous to me. So I'm trying to figure out a way to solve this problem, to make it more private, but also make it a competitive marketplace. Right. So, I settled on making it so that you could, and I had a lot of help from Christian and Topher figuring out how to engineer this, but the idea of broadcasting the offer, kind of using Nostr like Craigslist, like, hey, I got this thing. This is what it costs. Come and buy it if you like. And so that's just, on the individual service level. But then I said, what if you want to chain services together to make them more useful? So there's 3 examples that are live in CASCDR. And so what CASCDR does is it creates a beautiful visual tool for you to see this workflow. It'll go out and find the cheapest, the cheapest offering that it can for a given service. It will populate that, and then it'll route your requests to that, and then it'll chain them together such that you got to achieve a goal. So one example would be you can type in a very vague prompt for text to image generation, and it'll have ChatGPT make a really high quality one. So if you could type in like 5 words, it'll put out, write you like a whole paragraph that's very descriptive. And it'll get you a pretty good result. I find it's exceptionally good with things like landscapes. So you'd be like, give me a landscape of West Texas. It'll do a great job.
Yeah, here, let me try it right now. Let me see if I can get it going. So hit start. Let me just put landscape of Austin, Texas, Bitcoin country. I don't know. That works. And then right here it says the SD model. So just hit Dream Shaper. Is that what you're saying?
Yep, that's fine.
And then hit result.
Just hit the run button.
Hit the run button. Okay. Yep. And so right here, what we're seeing on the left side, the pipeline activity, what is?
It's just showing you the, what's going on in the background. So it's going to the endpoint and saying, hey, I want to do this thing. And then it comes back with an invoice. And that's all part of the NIP 105 spec protocol.
Cool. And then so Albi, I'm just paying this with Albi right now.
Yep.
And then so right now it's showing me, that's cool, dude. You have it here on the side that I can just pay there. So it says polling URL. What is that?
Yeah, it's just waiting for the result to be done. So
okay.
You have
so it found
ChatGPT come out, and so he put in like 5 words, and that came out with like 2 paragraphs on the things that make Austin unique. It's like beautiful skyscrapers, beautiful nature, and emphasize the cryptocurrency aspect of it is what it said. So,
and then so right now it's still. It's I guess it's trying to get a stable diffusion.
It came out. You have your pop-up blocker on. Otherwise, it would have just popped out. Okay. But if you go to you see on the bottom left corner how it says result, you can just copy paste that URL. Yep.
All right. So let me try this. So
it's still a demo. I know I have a lot of work to do to make it more friendly.
It looks really clean. Oh, wow.
That was really
Dude, that actually looks like Town Lake, man.
That really does look like.
Check that out, Marcus.
I was surprised by that.
That looks like Town
Holy
Lake.
Crap.
That looks pretty good.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
That's what CASCDR came out with.
That looks good, dude.
That's my baby.
Stable diffusion.
That's my baby.
That's actually my building.
Whoa. Yeah, it really does. Dude, that looks
like Town Lake, bro.
That is incredible.
That's awesome.
It has the second level and everything.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So that's one example for CASCDR. Another example is you can just punch in a YouTube URL.
So I can go right here.
Yeah, and it'll you put in the URL and it'll come out with a transcript. I still have to work through some things on the services side to make it.
I was listening to this.
It's got to be under 20 minutes. That's what I was about to say. So that's kind of the limitation right now.
Yeah, there's this. I fell into this rabbit hole, dude, yesterday with this Drake AI weekend thing, and then. Oh man, dude, it's some really. I really, dude. I wish I had more free time because I definitely want to like play with the audio side of this stuff.
Really?
Yeah, dude. Because, dude, like I remember, like, when I was young, thinking like, oh man, it'd be cool if you got this person to see. You know what I mean? Just stuff like that to me. Just
run button.
Hit the run button. Okay. So I'm throwing this like Drake thing in here and see if it works. It's just there was this. So for people that are listening, there was this AI. Version of this thing called it was like an AI Drake and an AI Weekend, and they made this song and it got really popular, and I think the guy who made it was called Ghostwriter. Turns out that guy is like just like a TikToker. He's actually a musician. That's why it was so good. But he did an exceptional job, and so right now I'm throwing that video or that song in there, and then I'm using CASCDR to see if I can get the lyrics for it.
Did you see that demo of the guy? It was like a corny white guy, like just reading out Kanye lyrics, and then it puts it in.
Yeah, I saw that guy.
Yeah. And you're like, what? This is actually.
Oh wow!
Like at first you're like, this sucks, and then you're like, wow, this slaps.
So like, yeah, look. You came back with a transcript, which is I came in with my ex, like Selena the Flex, I bump in Justin Bieber, the flavor ain't left. Oh wow, dude. So it does get here. Let me hit the song. I mean. Let me see here. So we'll go back to CASCDR and see if it matches it.
I came in with my ex like Selena the Flex, bumping Justin Bieber.
Wow, it's pretty good, dude.
She know what she need, I need her. She blessed, giving my
Isn't that cool? You know what? I just had a great idea. Wouldn't it be cool if it like on the side had the video and you can like see it in real time?
That would be cool. Like I said, there's a lot of UX stuff that would still need to be tweaked.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So, what's this image to text thing here?
Yeah, so I just launched this in the last few days.
Dude, this is fun, man.
Yes, that's the whole point. Is I want to make it fun to be sovereign and protect your privacy.
But also, like, I'm paying in Bitcoin though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You don't want to pay in Bitcoin?
I'm just saying I'm paying in Bitcoin. I don't have to.
Yeah,
pay
it's
in a credit
beautiful.
card if I want to.
It's beautiful. So I made a couple assistants. The idea is that you can snap a photo and then have an LLM reason about that photo. So
I just grab a photo from my.
yeah, so there's 2 preset assistants I have. There's three different there's 2 presets and there's 1 custom. So if you do custom, you can be like, what is this, or who is this person, or what can I know about this person? But the other 2 are, one is it helps you figure out how much you can sell an item for in Bitcoin. So I was kind of joking, but the prompt says, I'm trying to sell all my belongings for Bitcoin in preparation for the great bull run. Please take the photo provided and help me determine a competitive value for it in Bitcoin.
Oh.
I had to do tons of trickery to get the LLM to accept it because it was trying to censor me the whole time.
Wow.
And
you figured it out.
Yeah, I figured out how to engineer.
So
the
how would I
it
use this in a scenario then?
So
I'm trying to think of
so just you could snap a photo of anything near you that you're willing to sell for Bitcoin, and then it'll tell you how much you can get for it. So
okay.
So yeah, you could do that picture would be perfect. So he's got the kick-ass pleblab fight club
hit run,
and then and he hits run. So now it's going to upload this photo, and it's going to cost him about a cent. And it's just going to it's going to upload the photo and then ask the LLM a follow-up question. That question happens to be, how much is this worth in sats? And it'll come back with a result. It's going to take a little while because image to text is a little bit.
And so this is called Sat Stacker. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
$20?
Yeah. So it says it's worth $20 or 52.9K
depending
sats.
on the brand and exclusivity of the design. Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. And then the other one you have is the shopping assistant.
Yeah, so then it'll just tell you, hey, where can I buy this thing, basically, and it'll come back.
And then so
like
up here you
Amazon.
have all this other stuff up here too as well.
Yeah, so at the top, if you go to available services, what it's showing you is, basically you can use them. I call it onesie twosie. You can use them, just the one service instead of putting them into a workflow.
Oh, okay. So what we saw was just the Logic app that kind of walked you through this, and then these are just individual.
That's right. And right now, those are just demos. I'm just trying to show people what's possible. And eventually what I'm going to do is make it so totally arbitrary, meaning you totally custom workflows can be built. So you just come in and just drag and drop different building blocks and then build your own and do whatever you want with it.
That's cool, man. Dang, dude. That's amazing. Good job, dude.
Thank you.
And you did this for the Bolt.fun?
Oh, yeah. I did it for Bolt.fun.
You think you'll win?
I don't know. We'll see. I'm pretty proud of what I built regardless. That in itself is a prize, but it would be great to just get more mind sharing, get more people building services and maybe even contributing and helping me make this thing great. Isn't there other NIPs out there like, or am I thinking of something else like in this regard? Yeah, I think there's other NIPs out there.
What's your whole, just let's dive into Nostr real quick, because I think it's important to here, move the mic down a little bit. So
sure.
you can, speak into it.
Sure.
Yeah. So what's your whole, how do you see Nostr and how do you see, how that playing out? And then how does that connect with AI and Lightning and all that stuff? Just from your point of view.
From my point of view, I think Nostr's great from the perspective that I'm glad people are thinking about censorship resistance and trying to find solutions to that. I am a little concerned because I do think that there was a lot of money dumped on it pretty early. So that's kind of making it, you might attract the wrong kind of people. You really do just kind of want the hardcore
organic
zealot FOSS people in there to keep it going. I also worry about, I don't want it to just be Bitcoiners in an echo chamber. I do want to see more people from outside. And I worry that, if everyone deletes Twitter at the same time, then you kind of lose influence in that sphere and the ability to get more people on the Bitcoin lifeboat. So I worry about that. However, obviously I think it's great that we have a place to go. I know people talk about this idea of the cyber pandemic of, people trying to KYC the whole internet. I worry about that. And I think it's great that we have somewhere we can go like Nostr to
absolutely.
that. So that's kind of the social side, but then the flip side is, it shouldn't just be social media. It's a new decentralized way to coordinate. So I thought it was really cool. People are figuring out ways to do coin joins on them. In this case, people are figuring out different ways to offer API services or ratings or other types of services that aren't necessarily, a Twitter clone.
Right. Do you think, I kind of already know the answer to this, but do you think, I'm going to ask it anyway, because maybe not enough people know. Do you think the NIP process with with Nostr is a little bit cumbersome.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge. I think there's a lot of, I think all devs kind of have an ego in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be tough to overcome that, and I think it takes a very special kind of person to be a Satoshi that's willing to walk away or willing to take input from different people. If you study the early days of Bitcoin history, I forgot the guy's name, but the guy that Satoshi handed it to was a pretty, I won't call him egoless, but he was very low on narcissism. So he was more willing to take input. And in a lot of ways, he wasn't even really that cyberpunk. He was pretty docile, I would say. So it was interesting to have those different personalities, but still it kind of kept its core character. I think it's very challenging as the person reviewing and maintaining a huge FOSS repo like that. So I empathize with that, but at the same time, I do worry that is a centralization risk, and also that there's been so much money dumped into this. There is kind of a conflict of interest problem that could enter into this, where you're like, well, I already did it this way. I didn't necessarily think about the best way to do it. I just put it out there, and this is what my thing's built on. And now maybe there's a competing thing, and I don't want that out there. I don't want to lose my status by having to admit I was wrong, because admitting you're wrong is hard, and some people don't like to do it.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I definitely agree, and definitely agree on the money being thrown early on. I think it would have been better if it had just gone naturally the way it was going. I think, because after that it was just like the amount of inbound and all that kind of stuff. It was also good in a way too, because it just brought more developers on there as well. And
I was pretty early. I was super early. I heard Marty's podcast where he talked to Will. Shout out to Will, awesome guy. And I heard, I'm very much what's called the Sinophile of the Chinese culture, and I heard that there were Chinese dissidents there. I think the Communist Party of China is a scourge of the earth, and they're in a lot of ways they've suppressed. They've suppressed a lot of the beautiful things about the Chinese culture. So I really empathize with their plight, and
a scared man.
And I thought it was really cool what Will was doing to help people speak their mind. I heard there were Chinese dissidents there. I did very small contributions early to Damus, and I got to learn about the protocol early, and I kind of forgot about it because I was, this was like July 2022. I forgot about it. I was real busy. Came back, 4 or 5 months later, and there was gasoline poured on this thing by Uncle Jack Dorsey,
Daddy Jack.
Yeah,
dude. It's yeah, but it was also at that time too where they were going to release the blue check thing, and so it kind of made sense like why it had to happen at that point, just because it was more of a fight or flight kind of mode thing. Is there anything that surprised you about the AI space or Nostr this year?
I was pretty surprised. I guess the LLMs had been around for a while, but I wasn't really using them in a software development context until like, I would say February or March, because I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just doing it all myself. And I was like, wow, okay, I actually am a lot more productive with this tool, so I'm going to use it.
So that's
pretty fascinating. Yeah.
That surprised you.
It did surprise me how good it is at helping you iterate fast and troubleshoot and do other things. Like I remember one time it was like I forgot one semicolon somewhere in the code and it just wouldn't work at all. And then I just punched it and it's like, oh yeah, you forgot a semicolon on this line. And you're like, great.
Yeah.
Saved me like 2 hours of banging my head against the wall. So
where do you think this is all headed as far as like the whole L402 Nostr thing and AI? Do you think what you're building is the way forward for most people? They'll start maybe adding onto it, or
yeah, 100%. I'm trying to get more people on board offering services. My idea would be, you could take something like an Umbrella or a Start9 and just press a button and it'll route, you punch in your API keys and then start using them and build up the anonymity set. It's almost like a VPN, but for these AI services, right? And you can earn a slight profit for providing that service to people and being a good Uncle Jim. But I think people are going to have to be serious about privacy, and they aren't yet. But I think eventually there's going to be enough stuff that happens, just like with the Trudeau thing. People are going to get burned and start to adapt. And I think Bitcoin is one of them. L402 is a beautiful, beautiful tool in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of seems like it is. I still think there's a little bit of friction there. Should be a little more seamless, but it's getting better.
Earlier, I was rewatching because I watched this in like April 2021. Peter Thiel did it was like the Nixon Society talk with Mike Pompeo. So they were talking a lot about the U.S.-China relationship because Nixon famously opened that relationship. They were talking about different things. And one of the things that he said that I still think about a lot was he talked about how, Bitcoin, something like Bitcoin is a very libertarian technology just in the way that it instantiates itself, and it's, at least slightly. And then AI is a very statist, authoritarian technology, and how having those two technologies competing is interesting, and it might be the story of our time.
Interesting.
Because the AI helps the state scale, right? They have all this data on everyone, but maybe they're not able to pick out a pattern of, some crime they could nail somebody for. But now with AI, it's snap of your fingers, which is scary.
Report, man.
It's pre-crime. It is scary.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think there's any way around it, honestly.
I don't think there is either, but I think there's steps we can take to protect ourselves and maintain our sovereignty.
Yeah. Yeah, because how do you even? Yeah, I guess it's just a cat and mouse game, right? At the end of the day, but it's scary, man. It's scary to know that one day you're gonna walk in the mall and they're gonna be like, "Hey, car, got these nice shoes for you. You ready to get them now?"
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be like, "Whoa."
Yeah.
When did I tell you I needed
sign
new
up
shoes?
for this? Yeah. Well, so what not Mike Pompeo, what Peter Thiel said earlier about that duality between AI and Bitcoin, I also think about, Eric Kayson's book. I think you talked about it in one of your previous podcasts about how, encryption and especially Bitcoin are tools for the individual against, having their rights taken. And it's sort of this agorist philosophy of, all right, well, if we can enshrine it in law, but it's the whole "don't tread on me" to "can't tread on me" paradigm, right? Of using these tools in a way that protects yourself against these, ever more predatory systems with the surveillance and the AI.
Do you think we have a better shot of doing that here in Texas than we do in some of these other states? Or you think that doesn't really matter?
I don't know. I don't know how it's going to play out. It just seems like cyberspace is its own frontier. But I definitely think it helps if you have an intolerant remnant that just won't put up with BS. And that's kind of what it seems like Texas is at this point.
Was it the opposite in the East Coast where you're from?
Yeah, I think it's a lot more docile. I mean, another book that informs a lot of my thinking is this book called American Nations. I forgot who authored it, but the idea is that, America was never one country. It's actually like 9 or 10 countries that each have their own unique culture. And so the East Coast, especially the Northeast, it was kind of heavily influenced by the Puritan culture, which was like, okay, we're going to put our trust in the government. And to start, it was a local government. And okay, we're going to have a very communal way of doing things. Fine. And eventually that evolved into kind of where we're at now. It kind of, in my opinion, it kind of threw out a lot of the religious stuff in exchange for Marxist stuff, but it still kind of has that mentality of, it's like, well, why would the government ever screw me over? They have that mentality. Whereas, Appalachia, the South, other parts of the country have kind of felt the weight and the costs of tyrannical and profligate spending government.
So it's just a different mindset, you think?
Yeah, it's just a totally different culture, and the way, think about the way you're taught in school, it's probably totally different. I mean, you'd probably do a really interesting documentary on something like that. I'd love to see that. But just, the culture, the local culture does still affect things.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, like, if just as Bitcoiners that are living here and now raising kids here, and you're seeing families, more and more Bitcoin families kind of, popping up here in Austin and the Central Texas area. Like, I think the more and more that kind of happens, I think that's what kind of swings the pendulum.
Yeah. I think the ideal is to homeschool your kids, or if you can't just do it yourself, like find a community of like-minded people and just hire a teacher instead of sending them to public schools. Because what are they going to learn at the public schools? They're typically going to learn how great the government is and how.
I think that's what I'm saying, dude. I think the longer I kind of see this kind of playing out here in Austin, I think it's just going to be completely orange, where you're going to start seeing like our own grocery stores, our own schools. Like I'm not even joking when I say this. Like I really do think that future is well on the horizon here in the next 10, 15 years.
What do you think is going to be like the switch that flips for the average, just let's say red American, or just like average Joe in Texas?
I think we can go back 100 years and look at the Weimar stuff. It's a perfect example of it.
Yeah. What happened there?
Yeah. Like in Germany, I think it was like in 1923, Weimar Republic, the inflation recession at that time. The only reason I know this stuff because I just started watching this like crazy Netflix documentary about the Third Reich. And there was a run. I think Stalin, was it Stalin that did that, or was it Stalin? So they had already seen like this kind of takeover that happened.
Who's they?
Germans.
Okay.
And so I guess
that's Stalin probably.
Yeah. And so at that time, the Germans saw that, and that's when you saw these, Adolf Hitler and I think his name's Eichmann or whatever his last name is. And so these guys started trying to do the same thing, and then he went to jail. And
there's a great drama series you'd love.
Well, here, let me get back to the point. So basically what happened in, so that whole 20s were just lost because it was just complete, like utter chaos. Right. And then it wasn't until the 1929 stock market crash that they then saw people start turning towards what Adolf and his crew were open to. And then the rest is history after that. But like, what I'm trying to say is like, I think we're going to need a scenario like that.
You got to hit rock bottom.
You have to hit rock bottom. And I think that's well on the horizon here before the end of the decade.
Yeah.
We'll get that crazy crash, and then people will finally wake up, and hopefully it doesn't go towards darkness.
So you think the Texans have the mentality of like, all right, well, they screwed us, so now we're just
I think we're kind of ahead of the curve here because we're already kind of building it. There's a lot of Bitcoiners in this town that are already kind of building things.
But I'm talking about the average Texan. Like, what about them? I mean, I think we're a pretty small remnant. I think we need more friends,
No, I think they're just going to get in just like the way some of these other guys have gotten in, that are kind of like on the outside. Maybe they don't work in the quote unquote industry or whatever, but they are well aware of it and well aware of like what we're trying to do here. And a lot of those values and ethics and principles fall in line with theirs as Texans, and they're okay with it. And I think obviously we've seen that with the Beef Initiative and stuff like that and other things. But that's what I'm trying to say. I think eventually that just kind of, it's just inevitable, man. I really do. I really do think so. There's like no doubt in my mind that's going to play out that way here in Texas. I mean, because you didn't go to, or you did go with us to
the Roundup.
The Roundup, right? Dude, do you see all those Bitcoiners from all over Texas? And that because a lot of them didn't show up, but dude, that was a good solid group of people that were trying to make the state orange there. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that was what was Jonathan's take? It was like, this is going to be sort of like the Medici, the Medici's.
I just remember him saying that Ninja Turtle joke. I don't remember that part. What did he say?
Well, just how Venice was kind of at the center of like a Renaissance because it was, it was liberal and it was, economically prosperous, and it was embracing new ways of doing things. Especially like, I think accounting played a big role, just the ability to do accounting. Cause that the number 0 was forbidden for a long time in the Western world.
I didn't know that.
That Robert Breedlove, great writer, wrote Bitcoin and the number 0, and he just talks about how how the discovery of absolute scarcity, which is Bitcoin, the discovery of absolute scarcity resembles the discovery of the number 0, and how that made the number 0 made accounting and economics much more efficient. Those who refused to get on board suffered, and those who didn't won out in the long run.
Yeah. I don't know, man. That's just kind of how I see it playing out. I'm pretty bullish on what's happening here. Really bullish on what's happening in Texas.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been more bullish on Texas in my entire life.
Yeah. I feel like I'm drinking from the fire hose every day. There's so many smart people, very
just
virtuous
in this town, right?
people. Yeah.
Yeah. This town is vibrant right now. So I don't know, man. It's gonna be really interesting. I can't wait to see more of this AI kind of stuff take off. And I have a feeling it's gonna take off next year, really, in a really big way here in town. So we'll see.
I'm excited.
Yeah. You're gonna keep building CASCDR?
I'm gonna keep building CASCDR.
Yeah. Do you think it'll ever become a company, or what are you thinking there?
We'll see.
Oh wow, really?
We'll see.
You think so?
I think it's possible. I mean, I think ideally, if that's the way I think it's best to move this forward, then I'll do that. I think it's imperatively important. I was saying it earlier, and it sounds kind of scary when people think about the Second Amendment. I think our relationship with this is very similar to the Second Amendment. We need to have control of these tools. We need to have mastery of these tools on an individual level. We need more people running their own LLMs so that we can resist what comes next. Because I think we're in the honeymoon phase. I think right now, they're kind of just letting us do kind of what we want. The LLMs soon, there's going to be more censorship. There's going to be more, punishment that, you might ask the wrong question. You might have a little too much.
And then get a knock at your door.
Yeah. You might have a little too much to think and ask the wrong question. And then the LLM comes for you. So, before that day comes, let's learn how to master these tools.
That's
and
scary,
run
dude.
them privately.
It's scary to think about.
Yeah, I mean, just your Google searches, they can imagine what's going on in your inner dialogue. So now, what happens when they can look at your LLM queries, which are even more sophisticated, right?
Man, at this point, we should just go live in a log cabin or something. It's crazy.
Not the worst idea, but I prefer not to be a lot.
Yeah.
I prefer to just try to master the tools and stay one step ahead if I can, and find a way to protect me and my friends and the people around me.
The future stacked like a rubber band. Off my phone on a hand-to-hand. Eat two from the waist, put two in his roof, and I can still living screams all night. These days it's all night. Not a ride their portfolios like rodeos. Rise every time my cherry close. On the end of my cigarettes, the smoke blows through the bars, and the CEO laughs as he strolls away, says I gotta pay off that rollaway or it's fuck your visitation days. So I pop off and in solitaire I dream of off of these Fred stairs and the skin off my fingers tear. Yeah, we think